Let me begin with a poem by Rabindranath Tagore. It's a poem of prayer known to us. In the silence of your heart, join me in saying this prayer. Have you not heard his silent steps? He comes, comes, ever comes. Every moment and every age, every day and every night, he comes, comes, ever comes. Many a song have I sung in many a mood of mind, but all their notes have always proclaimed, He comes, comes, ever comes. In the fragrant days of sunny April, through the forest paths He comes, comes, ever comes. In the rainy gloom of July nights, on the thundering chariot of clouds, He comes, comes, ever comes. In sorrow after sorrow, it is his steps that press upon my heart, and it is the golden touch of his feet that makes my joy to shine. Dear teachers, students, well-wishers, and dear brother Jesuits and friends, good evening to everyone. As Jesuits, collaborators, and friends, we celebrate fruitfully and meaningfully the year 2021-22 as Ignatian Year. As we know, the Ignatian Year was opened on May 20th, the 500th anniversary when Ignatius the soldier was injured by a cannonball in the Battle of Pamplona. The year will conclude on July 31st, as you know, 2022, on the feast of St. Ignatius. The Ignatian Year provides us with lots of opportunities for prayer, reflection, learning, and invites us to draw inspiration from the life and example of St. Ignatius. In the light of the Ignatian Year, I will now share with you on the theme or topic, Ignatian wisdom towards caring for creation. This topic is also relevant in the wake of COP26, which took place in Glasgow, Scotland. COP26 is the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference that brought parties together to quicken action towards the goals of the Paris Agreement of 2015 and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. My presentation will have the following sub-themes. I will give you a brief introduction. After that, we'll speak on nature and Ignatius. We'll also speak on wisdom of Ignatius to care for the earth, spiritual exercises in nature's embrace, of Ignatius and its implications in caring for the wounded earth, a conclusion. Let me begin with the introduction. In my introduction, let me share with you 4 realities of our world as we reflect on the theme, Ignatian wisdom towards care for creation. The earth is a gift from the divine. Within its beautiful web of life, we are bound in kinship with all creatures, both human and non-human. Today, however, our life on earth is in agony of a severe and widespread ecological crisis. In the name of progress and personal enrichment, human beings have turned earth and extracted what they want, even if it means degrading or destroying the sources of life that every human and other creatures in the universe require for survival. The ecological crisis is particularly complex in the context of India, whether the crisis manifests itself in dangerous levels of air pollution, mass deforestation, land degradation, poisoned rivers, or patterns of catastrophic drought and flood. Environmental disaster has reached India on a massive scale. It is placed on record that the world's 30 most polluted cities are in India. This includes New Delhi, which has been cited as the most polluted capital city in the world, consecutively for the 3rd year. The second reality, widening gap between the rich and the poor. There is a widening tension between the rich and the poor in India, precisely due to the economic disparity and inequality. While India is one of the fastest growing economies globally, it is also one of the unequal countries. Why do we talk about the poor while talking about environmental crisis? In addition to the economic situation, the poor also lack a healthy environment to live their lives. Moreover, the poorest and the most marginalized are the first to bear the brunt of environmental degradation. Since the poor directly rely on the environment, they are the first to be affected by air and water pollution, deforestation, soil erosion, floods, droughts, and you name it. Third reality is those who voice out for environmental care and those who deny climate change. Even in the light of the brutal reality of how environmental crisis affects the world, there is still tension among those who accept climate change and those who deny it. Some even wonder, is this merely the opinion of environmental fanatics, or is our world facing a real crisis? Even faced with activists like Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old who is leading a global youth movement to demand action on climate change, or Dr. Vandana Shiva, physicist, environmental scientist, and activist, and many others who demand action on climate change. Nevertheless, some still wonder, what good does it do to think or care about the environment? And therefore, we need to address environmental crisis through spirituality. Science and religion are often thought of as being at odds on many issues. But concerning the environment, however, there is widespread agreement. You take whether Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, various faiths acknowledge that the ecological crisis is not only one mere material degradation of our cosmos, nor should we see it in these terms alone. It is profoundly a spiritual crisis. The brokenness of the connection between human beings to God, one another, and all of creation. In his encyclical Laudato Si on caring for our common home, Pope Francis points out that the present ecological crisis is a sign of the ethical, cultural, and spiritual crisis of modernity. For Pope Francis, the way we live, use, and misuse the earth, which creates symptoms of sickness evident in the soil, in the water, in the air, and all forms of life, is a moral and spiritual issue, urgently requiring us to recognize the consequence of and necessary changes in our way of life. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Zen Buddhist monk, in his statement on climate change for the United Nations in 2014, has rightly said that the earth is not something outside of us. Breathing with mindfulness and contemplating our bodies, we realize that we are the earth. And the exploitation of the earth creates a spiritual disconnection between human beings and the environment. Acknowledging that every religious tradition in India has much to contribute to my presentation and our discussion, this evening, particularly in the light of the Ignatian year, I dedicate to seeking Ignatian wisdom towards caring for creation based on Ignatius' life, his God experiences, and his spiritual notebook, popularly known as the Spiritual Exercises. Although Ignatius would not be a common choice for most people interested in linking or connecting the environmental crisis and spirituality, his life and work offer some help in making that connection. Until recently, Ignatian spirituality was not seen as one of the resources that speak for environmental concerns and environmental protection. But today, many scholars explore the implicit and explicit connection between Ignatius and ecology. And therefore, in what follows, I want to signal how Ignatius was enveloped by nature in his life, in his encounter with God, as well as how he helps us to think about caring for the earth. Ignatius and nature. Nature envelops the home of Ignatius. What were the ecological setting of the hometown of Ignatius? In June 2017, I had the opportunity to spend a few days in Ignatius' hometown, Loyola. During my stay in Loyola, I marveled at the beauty of the Loyola Valley. Majestic mountains and the peaceful environment surrounded the valley. I was touched by the natural atmosphere of the land. During my stay there, I said to myself, this is the beauty of the land now in the 21st century. How much more must be the beauty of nature during the time of in the 15th, 16th century? It was recorded that the hills on the one side of the house were thickly carpeted with beech and oak trees and apple orchards and chestnut groves. The landscape is brilliantly green in spring and summer. In autumn, this verdant appearance takes on a golden hue mixed with the warm shades of oncoming fall. And when winter comes, all becomes muted violet and rust. A Castilian Jesuit, Father Pedro, who visited Loyola in 1551 in the lifetime of Ignatius, described in a letter how Loyola was completely surrounded by a forest and by trees of many kinds of fruits, so thick that one almost does not see the house until he or she is at the door. The beautiful surrounding of Ignatius' homeland reveal that he was born and brought up in a beautiful environment of mountains, hills, and natural beauty. As the saying goes, show me where you live, and I will tell you who you are. We can say that Ignatius, who lived in such a natural setting from his childhood, cultivated a great fondness for the beauties and marvels of God's creation from his young age. Therefore, there is no doubt that Ignatius' understanding of the natural world, which ultimately springs from the Creator, finds its roots in the beautiful environmental atmosphere of Loyola. For this reason, the environmental atmosphere of his homeland takes on something more than just ordinary importance for us. Nature envelops Ignatius and his God experiences. Let me begin with Loyola Castle. Having been brought up in the lap of nature, Ignatius cultivated a great sensitivity for the beauty and marvels of God's creation. Ignatius not only marveled at the beauty of creation, he really cherished a deep connection with the Creator through the beauty of nature, which always gave him a great consolation. In other words, Ignatius began to have a personal experience of God in creation. It all started at Loyola. During his convalescence, Ignatius used to sit by the window at night and watch the stars, which he recalls in his autobiography. The greatest consolation he received at this time was from gazing at the sky and stars, which he did often and for a long time, because with this, he used to feel in himself a great impetus towards serving God. What is evident is that Ignatius was touched by God through the creation and could contemplate things through gazing at the stars in the sky, which drew him to serve the Lord. Pilgrim journey. What began at Loyola, an interior connection with nature, continued as Ignatius was set up to be a pilgrim after his conversion. Ignatius spent a great deal of time walking long distances across Europe before he settled in Rome. And therefore, one cannot help but imagine that these journeys on a mule and foot through the nature must have played a significant part in Ignatius' spiritual journey. While he walked, he had no iPods or cell phones, but contemplated on a landscape and connected with God. According to Ignatius, creation is an expression of God. It is said that Ignatius would stop and gaze at a flower on the way and wonder, if this flower is already so lovely, how lovely then must be the God. During his pilgrim journey, it is impossible to ignore the invasion of cosmic feelings in the heart and soul of Ignatius in Manresa on the banks of the Cardona River. Only Ignatius, who underwent such an experience, could describe the physical settings of the river banks, which engrossed Ignatius with one of the most significant mystical experiences. It is said it's a place where he sat down for a moment facing the river that ran deep at that place. As he sat, the eyes of his understanding began to open, and although he saw no vision, he did see and understand many things, both spiritual things and matters of faith and learning. This took place with so great an enlightenment that everything seemed altogether new to him. There is little doubt that Ignatius related this experience and all other things as God's way of guiding souls more deeply to God, and that it seemed to him that he was a different man and that he had a different intellect from the one he had before. The vision by the Cardona is a high point in Ignatius' life. and one which he saw as decisively formative. Thus, Ignatius' understanding of the natural world is rooted in his interior experiences at the river Cardona. Residence in Rome. It was noted that the residence acquired by the Society of Jesus in Rome were framed by gardens and vineyards. According to early companions, Ignatius used to take into the small garden or orchard either to talk business or for counseling. It is said that Ignatius would often stop to look contemplatively at the blue sky. Moreover, in the last decades of his life, when he was caught up with the administration and writing the constitution in Rome, one of his companions, Diego Linus, noticed that Ignatius would sometimes get away from his workplace and connect himself with creation. And one of his companion, Pedro de Rabinera, speaks of this quite beautifully. He would go to the terrace or to a place where all sky were visible. There he would stand, take off his cap, and remain still a short while with his eyes lifted toward the sky. Then he would kneel and bow down before God. Afterward, he would sit down on a low bench because of the weakness of his body, did not permit him to do anything else. There he would sit with the head uncovered and tears streaming ever so gently and silently that one heard not a single sigh or any rustling whatsoever. What became evident was that Ignatius felt spiritually refreshed and elevated by immersing himself in the beauty of creation and the Creator. He found not only in quiet time in a private room, but also during his time spent with nature. This means Ignatius recognized how profoundly loved he was by God through God's creation. Therefore, whether it was from the rooftop of the Curia in Rome or his home at Loyola, Ignatius indeed beheld the stars with new eyes and connected himself with his Creator. Let us now dwell on the wisdom of Ignatius to care for the earth, the spiritual exercises in nature's embrace. As we know, dear friends, that the environmental crisis was not an issue during the time of Ignatius. Even if there were threats of ecological degradations, they did not come to light until the 19th or 20th centuries. Therefore, it would not be fair to think Ignatius writing the spiritual exercises as a response to today's environmental problems. In that case, it is also not a book on eco-theology or eco-spirituality, nor did Ignatius intend his book to be one. It is also not fair to think of Ignatius as an early advocate of earth-centered spirituality. However, I propose that through the spiritual exercises, Ignatius offers his wisdom to recognize how profoundly God loves human beings through God's creation and what God expects in return from the human community. Although there are several key meditations related to our topic in the book of the spiritual exercises, perhaps the fullest expression of Ignatian wisdom towards caring for creation is found in the contemplation known as the contemplation to attain love, Numbers 230 to 237 in the spiritual exercises. Since the contemplation of the love of God is the last of the exercises, as well as a transition toward everyday life, the focus of Ignatius was to reconnect the retreatant with the world, creation, and the human community as they move on from the retreat. In the light of this, Ignatius offers 4 points that are renowned for their insights and wisdom. First, God gifting. Second, God dwelling. Third, God laboring. And fourth, source of God's gifts. These 4 insights are the wisdom of Ignatius concerning caring for creation. However, I will focus this evening on the 2 pieces of wisdom: Dios habita, God dwelling, and Dios labora, God laboring and working in creation. These points of wisdom underscore God's sacred presence and action in the world, as well as the interconnectedness of all things within the universe. Let us look at Dios habita, God dwells. What does this wisdom of Ignatius tell us? Through this piece of wisdom, Ignatius invites us to see how God dwells in creatures. Abita means to dwell, to live, to settle, to stay, abide, or to remain. Ignatius invites us to contemplate how God dwells in the elements, in the plants, giving them life, in the animals, giving them sensation, in human beings, giving them intelligence, and in our very selves, giving us existence and feeling and making us God's own temple. Through this consideration, Ignatius wants us to focus on the dwelling of God in creation, in every creature and in every human body. And therefore, invitation is to become aware of God's presence in all of God's gifts, in the elements, the plants, in the animals, and in the human community, and residing and dwelling in you and in me, and so. Ignatius invites us to understand that God dwells within all created things. One of the Ignatian scholar, Michael Buckley, points out that Ignatius reveals God does not remain outside of creation, but dwells within creatures, affecting them to be what they are by his presence. Therefore, earth and all its inhabitants are not only a gift from God, but also a sacred gift because God dwells in them. As Buckley puts it, everything is sacred because God is immanent within creation. God, who has created this universe, does not remain aloof, but stays ever closer to God's creation, as I said. So God dwells in his creation and is everywhere indivisibly present in all his works. He is transcendent above all his works, even while he is immanent within them. And therefore, the wisdom of Ignatius comes from his own experience of God in creation. The sky, the sun, the clouds, trees, plants, flowers, grass, sand, rocks, and by seeing God's presence in them, Ignatius finds a way to open his heart to the God's revelation of love. By letting his exterior senses and imagination become absorbed in creation, Ignatius created the interior space to be attentive to God's presence. Second piece of wisdom is Dios labora. God works and labors. The second piece of wisdom of Ignatius towards caring for creation is to consider how God labors and works for human beings in all the creatures on the face of the earth. That is, God acts in the manner of one who is working, laboring, as in the heavens, in the same way in the elements, plants, fruits, cattle, and so on. Here, the wisdom of Ignatius is to see, to contemplate God as the one who is not merely filling his creation just with his presence, but continuously works and labors in with creation. God, as Ignatius understands, is not distant from our laborers in the world. Ignatius offers us a picture of God who is lovingly involved in every part of creation, indeed, in every aspect of human beings and all creatures. The wisdom of seeing God working and laboring is something very unique of Ignatius. Probably no other mystic who could speak of God as the laborer. Father Peter Hans Kolvenbach points out that Ignatius was likely the first person in the history of Christian spirituality to perceive God at labor or work, as the God who continues to work, always filling up the universe and actively awakening the divine life in all things for the good of the humanity. This powerful image of God who works and labors is a busy God, not a God who sits in the high heavens above, ruling over the universe in a very detached way. The Ignatian God is very involved in the life of the world intimate. It reveals to us how God is always involved in all created things on the face of the earth and doing all this for us. The wisdom of Ignatius therefore evokes a new kind of reverential humility for the gift of creation and how we in turn should resolve to labor and work with God towards caring for creation. We are invited to labor with God in finding new ways of entering into solidarity with our beloved planet and addressing the current ecological crisis that we face at this time. And therefore, I might ask, Or we could ask ourselves, if God is at work in creation, caring, nurturing, sustaining, fructifying, how can I be a mere spectator in the world? And therefore, having looked at this two pieces of wisdom of Ignatius, let us see what does this wisdom of Ignatius convey concerning environmental crisis. What are their implications in caring for God's creation? What is the significance of encountering God who labors in creation? Looking at the environmental crisis, the wisdom of Ignatius reveals to us that perhaps the key reason for human beings continue to pollute the air, cut trees, pile up atomic waste, or indiscriminately contaminate our rivers and lakes and exploit the earth because they do not see the presence and actions or laboring of God in creation. Let me point out four implications drawn from the wisdom of Ignatius. The first one, growing in deep appreciation and reverence for God's creation. Human tendency is to take things for granted, given in abundance. That is the case with God's gift of creation. Since we are so much enveloped by nature, we are often take them for granted and fail to appreciate how and show reverence for the gift of the earth, the plants, the flowers, the animals, rivers, mountains, and all of the beauty of God's creation. In the everyday busy moments of our life, we can begin to lose our appreciation and wonder of God's creation. We can grow desensitized to the details of the life and beauty of simple joys. The wisdom of Ignatius tells us that unless we grow in the intimacy of seeing God's presence in creation, we would never find a time to speak with the lilies of the field and animals and appreciate and show reverence to them. Respecting creation means not only protecting and safeguarding the earth, water, and other parts of the natural world, it is also expressing respect for human beings who share those gifts and bear responsibility for them. Second one, growing in our gratitude to the Creator and all of creation. Gratitude is central to Ignatius, and for him, we ask not only to recognize the gifts of God, but also for the grace of gratitude, because often we receive gifts and are not moved by gratitude. Ignatius believed that God gifted humanity through everything imaginable, and that God continuously resides with humanity and all of creation. Thus, all human beings in turn find ways to express their gratitude to the Creator. That is, finding your own ways to say thanks. It doesn't matter what way you select to express your gratitude. Have you not experienced that taking a walk in nature helps you relax? When you are stressed, when you are tired, breathing deeply of fresh air refreshes you. When you feel so busy and nothing is working for you, being outdoor helps you slow down and feel more centered again. What matters the most here is that you are grateful for God's splendor of creation. The wisdom of Ignatius, seeing God dwelling in creation, expands our gratitude to the Creator who creates and resides in God's all of creation as well as the creation itself. Third one, deepening our interconnectedness, our connectedness to nature. In today's world, in some way, human beings have lost the truth that human beings and nature are indeed interconnected and interdependent to each other. And therefore, human beings have been behaving as a species apart, arrogant and selfish, taking diabolical liberties with the rest of the creation. Ignatian wisdom tells us that we are profoundly connected to the cosmos, the earth, and the life around us. Human life cannot be understood apart from the natural environment, of which humanity is an intrinsic part. Today, many scientists, ecologists, and religious leaders repeatedly affirm that our human body is, in essence, connected with other creatures and forms of life, as well as with the universe, its galaxies, and all its stars. Oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon are the elemental connection among all species. And therefore, we are not in any way isolated from the rest of the creation. Instead, we live on this earth in a profound interrelationship with all created things. Such interconnectedness, interdependence, shared essence, shared habitat, has the power to move us to the knowledge of who we are and where we belong, both as individuals and as social and religious beings. Such an affirmation of connectedness stimulates an effective response to the needs and concerns of the natural world and our relationship with one another. The fourth one, invitation to co-labor or co-work with God or to imitate the doing of God. The beauty and grandeur of creation, the majesty of life expressed in plants and animals, the power of nature manifested in wind and storm, all of these reveal the splendor and majesty of God and call forth awe and wonder that draws our heart to the presence of God alive in the world. This implies that God is engaged in the life of each creature. However, Ignatius does not want us to stop contemplating just as being of God. That means just we spend time just meditating and contemplating. Instead, he wants us to move to encounter and experience the doing of God. God who not only dwells, but also works in creation. Then we are called to share in God's labor, letting ourselves be filled with the love of God, the labor of God, and moved to participate in God's work of caring for God's creation. In other words, while the first piece of wisdom, God dwelling in creation, roots us in the contemplative nature and the love of God, radiating into the entire creation, the second piece of wisdom, God who labors, leads us to the active labor of God, continuously laboring in creation. While the first, as noted, has invited us to have a new way of being, spending time and appreciating with creation, the second has called us to have a new way of doing for creation. However, for Ignatius, one must be grounded in both the being and the doing of God. And therefore, here I want to propose, there could be many ways. Let me propose two ways to co-work with God in caring for God's creation. The first is changes in our interior and exterior lifestyles. One concrete way to co-work or labor is to change and adapt one's lifestyle to the needs and concerns of creation. An interior change of lifestyle implies the need for a change of heart. Such a change of heart would require the realization that what we have done to creation is a violation of the rights of God's creation. Our uncontrollable exploitation of the earth often reveals our selfishness, arrogance, violence, and greed, all of which ultimately destroy the beauty, integrity, and harmony of God and God's creation. Human relationship with nature is not an I-it relationship, but it must be we relationship, expressing a deep sense of interconnection and interdependence. Such a personal change of heart is often in our exterior lifestyles, expressed in our exterior lifestyles as well. One of the means of co-laboring with God is to change our lifestyle, embracing more simplicity that does not threaten the livelihood of the non-human world. Our lifestyle must be an expression of an inner voice that cries out that we do not own the earth, but that we belong to it. This relationship of belonging is foundational and dynamic in Ignatius' understanding of God dwelling and God laboring in creation. The second I propose is a call for an eco-interreligious engagement as another way to co-work and co-labor with God. In our efforts to co-work or co-labor with God to save our wounded world and be aware of the multi-religious context in India, I propose an eco-interreligious dialogue or conversation, that is an encounter between members of different religious traditions, particularly in the context of India, which is a very multi-religious context, in the sharing of life experiences, worship, spirituality, and practices concerning ecology. In this connection, Pope Francis tells us should spare religions to dialogue among themselves for the sake of protecting nature, defending the poor, and building network of respect and fraternity. God, who is laboring for the good of creation, is calling the attention of every religious tradition to unite with others to address this vital issue of our time adequate. We desire such engagement, not only our very survival is at stake, but also because we ultimately discover or intuitively know that there is something that binds us with creation in one community of life. I would also say that our readiness to become co worker with God also needs the support of our prayer, contemplation, and other spiritual practices. Let me conclude. We have learned that Ignatius was very close to nature. Such closeness often led him to a more profound mystical experiences of God in creation. In the context of the ecological crisis of today, the wisdom of Ignatius, God dwelling and God laboring, as striking images of God proposed by Ignatius, are not to be taken as mere images or as the product of speculation or imagination. Instead, they are wise and insightful inspiration and convey in depth directions for caring for the earth. Today we understand future of humanity depends on our planet. The future of the earth very much depends on humanity. These insights and wisdom of Ignatius demand that we as human beings are invited not merely to appreciate and contemplate the dwelling presence of God in the beauty and wonder of God's creation, but more to co-labor with God in caring for creation, as well as co-labor with every community of faith through whom also God labors to preserve this earth. Let me conclude with this prayer. God, our Creator, thank you for the earth, the sky, the springs and streams, the seas and the great oceans, the lilies and the plants and all the life forms. They are yours, filled with your presence and your tender love and grace. We are sorry for what we have done to your creation, which is a gift given to everyone. Help us to listen to the cry of the earth. May we imbibe the wisdom of Ignatius to care for the earth, not just as individuals, but as a community of believers. Thank you.